and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about stepping out in faith and standing and having courage to, just step out and do what God has called us to do, to obey God even when it seems uncertain. And guys, I find myself in this kind of season where I know that God is asking me to step out and do certain things that with my natural eyes, I don't necessarily understand or see the benefit of. And I think many of you can relate to this, where you might be in a season that God has actually called you to be obedient, to do something that you don't quite understand or something that takes a lot of faith to do. God might ask you to step out and do something that is requiring you to just have faith, because you might not be able to see with your natural eyes. The natural circumstances of the thing may not reflect anything that you might have thought or imagined. And I mean, that's really what it is to step out in faith. It's just to be obedient to God. And one thing I'm learning in this season is being obedient to God regardless of the results. I think so many times we attach ourselves to the results of the thing, and not enough to just being obedient to God, because you could be obedient to God and do something and not see the fruit of that obedience for a while to come. And I think that so many of us actually give up on these little things that we may feel in our spirit that God has called us to do because we don't see the fruit when we want to see it. You know, God is calling you to do something or to be consistent with something that you don't necessarily see with your natural eyes as producing the fruit that you wanted to produce or the results that you wanted to produce. And this can really apply to anything. It could apply to a career, it could apply to an opportunity where God's just telling you, you know what, step out. Or you just feel after having prayed about the situation that you want to step out, that you want to take a leap of faith. So that's essentially what, this video is about. And it's something that I feel like God has been talking to me about. And I'm sure if you've clicked on this video, it's something that God could be talking to you about as well. I've been listening to the songs Oceans lately, and I think that song is so beautiful. If you guys haven't heard it, I'm surprised. It's such a Christian song. It's such a staple song within Christianity. But essentially that song just speaks of the story in Matthew. That story is such an amazing summary of what obedience and stepping out in faith really looks like. And essentially the song is about what happened in Matthew when Jesus was walking on water to get to the disciples in the boat. At some point, Peter decided to walk towards Jesus. And as he was walking towards Jesus, it was really an act of faith for him to step onto the murky water and not know, whether or not he was going to sink. As Peter walks onto the water, he becomes afraid. And I actually just want to read that story to you because I think it's so powerful. "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" So interesting how as soon as Peter saw the wind and took his eyes off of Jesus, he became afraid and then began to sink. And then Jesus, when he grabbed a hold of him, because Jesus was always with him, said to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt? You were stepping out onto the water. I called you to step out, and you stepped out onto the water. But as soon as you looked around you, you looked at your circumstances, at the wind, your circumstances weren't aligning with what you thought it would look like. You began to sink out of fear. Why? I called you to step out." And it's so interesting because another verse that I actually discovered, or rather that I think the Holy Spirit gave me fresh eyes to read, which is very similar to this one, is in Exodus 14. And I just want to read you some snippets of that verse. So this is essentially about when the children of Israel were leaving Egypt. They were leaving slavery. God had delivered them from Egypt, and they were marching out of Egypt before Moses parted the Red Sea. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, so that he pursued the Israelites who were marching out boldly. The Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi Hahiroth, opposite Baal-Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. So in that story, you actually see a similar pattern, which is God delivering the children of Israel out of Egypt and them literally marching out boldly out of Egypt. But as soon as they saw the enemy approach, they then began to fear and to cry out to the Lord. It's crazy how they were so full of faith when they were marching out of Egypt, when they saw the deliverance of the Lord. And mind you, this happened after God had proven to them how mighty and powerful he was by bringing all of the plagues to Egypt. So they'd seen the power of God, they'd seen the hand of God, and they had had enough faith to actually march out of Egypt boldly. And yet, as soon as they saw opposition, as soon as they saw the enemy and their circumstances sort of begin to change, they grew fearful. It's just so interesting how this is such a picture of our faith sometimes as people, is that God can give us a word and we can even step out. But as soon as the circumstances begin to change or opposition begins to manifest itself, it's like we completely forget the word that God has given us and begin to fear. And the whole time God is like, why are you crying out to me? Just like he said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Go on, move forward, march on. I've got you. I'm here. I told you to step out. I've given you provision to step out. Stop crying out to me and losing faith and losing hope as soon as you see opposition, and just go. And I guess this message is just for anybody who that God had given you a word. And when you received that word, you just knew it was a word from God and you stepped out. But now the circumstances are such that you're beginning to doubt. You're beginning to see the wind and the waves, and you no longer think that God has called you to step out, and you think that God may have left you. That is not the case. One thing that I'm learning in this season is that oftentimes there are battles before the blessing. There are battles before the promised land. And just because the circumstances are such that there is opposition does not mean that God did not call you to step out. Stand firm in your faith, just like God told Moses and told the Israelites to stand firm, to not be afraid, and watch as God fights for you in your circumstance. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I pray that this speaks to you, because this is something that's been constantly ringing in my mind. Just continue on. Be faithful with the little that you have, and continue to be faithful. Continue to step out and watch as God fights for you and makes room for you in your promised land. So guys, if you like this video, please like, please comment, please share, and let me know, what you think, if you can relate to this. I always enjoy reading you guys' comments, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I will see you next week. And God bless you guys. Stand firm, watch as God fights for you, and have faith. Don't doubt. Just keep stepping out and do what God has called you to do, because why not? God bless you guys. Mwah.